There's more to life than a fucking Fields Medal.
This is too important, Sean.
But I never considered not sleeping with you a sacrifice.
You come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you ask me to do murder. Money.
Sometimes what makes a film unforgettable isn't the plot or the cast or even the script. It's the moment something unplanned happens and everyone knows not to cut. These are the lines, the reactions, the glances that were never supposed to be there but stayed anyway. And when they did, they turned a good scene into something permanent. Pretty Woman begins with a lost corporate lawyer behind the wheel of someone else's sports car and a woman on the boulevard who offers him directions with the kind of casual confidence that doesn't ask for permission. He pays her for one night, then pays again for 6 more, and somewhere between business meetings and borrowed clothes, they start becoming something they weren't trying to be. Vivian was never written to be rescued, and Edward was never meant to care, but the story bent under the weight of their chemistry. What's often forgotten is how close the film came to being something entirely different, a bleak story where the week ends with Vivian alone again, and Edward driving away without ever looking back. Julia Roberts wasn't anyone's first pick, and Richard Gere was ready to turn it down until she passed him a note during the audition that simply said, "Please say yes," and from there the film started breathing differently. The necklace scene, the one used in every trailer, was never blocked that way. Gere closed the box fast as a prank, and Roberts' reaction was so immediate and unscripted that it pulled everyone in. The bathtub moment where she sings Prince Under the Bubbles wasn't planned either, just something she did to kill time. But it's the piano scene that reveals how far they strayed from the page. Jadir improvised the melody one night on set. Roberts walked in barefoot without a single direction, and what happened next turned into the most intimate moment in the film. Apocalypse Now opens with a ceiling fan spinning in slow motion and a soldier staring at it like it's pulling him backward through time, already deep in a war that hasn't officially ended. Captain Willard is pulled from a hotel room in Saigon and sent up the Nung River to terminate Colonel Kurtz, a once celebrated officer who has built a cult-like empire in the Cambodian jungle. But what's on screen barely scratches what happened behind the camera. Francis Ford Coppola didn't just lose control of the film, he lost control of everything. The jungle was real, the weather destroyed sets, and the helicopters used in the famous Ride of the Valkyries scene were on loan from the Philippine military, who would leave mid-shot to go fight an actual war. Martin Sheen had a heart attack during filming and had to crawl through scenes when he couldn't walk. The mirror-punching breakdown wasn't staged, he was drunk, bleeding, and no one yelled cut. Brando showed up overweight, unread, and unwilling to follow any script, so Coppola fed him lines and cut around his improvisations. Whole scenes were rewritten daily, sometimes hourly. Coppola mortgaged his house to keep production going, and once admitted he didn't have an ending, a lead actor, or a story, just a deadline and a lot of chaos.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
The final film feels dreamlike because it was built that way, piece by unpredictable piece. What was meant to be a war movie became something closer to a fever dream, shaped more by exhaustion and survival than by any plan. When Harry Met Sally starts with 2 people who don't like each other sharing a car ride from Chicago to New York, and somehow ends years later with one of them running through Manhattan on New Year's Eve to say I love you. It's a story about timing more than love, about how people grow into relationships they weren't ready for the first time they met. But what makes it stick isn't the structure, it's the voice. Nora Ephron's script shaped the rhythm, but the actors gave it oxygen. Billy Crystal improvised constantly, often pushing scenes beyond the script's edge.
You take someone to the airport, it's clearly the beginning of a relationship. That's why I have never taken anyone to the airport at the beginning of a relationship.
The most famous line, "I'll have what she's having," wasn't in the draft. The diner scene was written as a joke, but Meg Ryan suggested faking the orgasm in public instead of just talking about it. Rob Reiner agreed. They filmed in Katz's Deli. Meg did the full performance, surrounded by real customers, and Crystal whispered the now iconic line to Reiner's mother, who was sitting in the back. She delivered it on camera without missing a beat. The chemistry between the leads wasn't manufactured either. They were friends off set, which let them interrupt, tease, and stall the way real people do. That tone carried into the interviews, sprinkled throughout the film, some of which were based on actual couples, and others completely scripted, but delivered so dryly they felt real. It's a movie that was planned carefully, but became timeless because of the moments they let go off script, and those ended up saying the most. The Godfather opens with a man asking for justice on the day of his godfather's daughter's wedding, and by the end, that same godfather is gone, his quiet youngest son transformed into something colder than anyone expected. The story spans decades, but the tension never slips. It's a slow burn built on stares, silences, and the kind of loyalty that always comes with a cost. What's less known is how fragile it all was behind the scenes. Marlon Brando had to audition by filming a fake morning routine, stuffing tissues in his cheeks to create Don Corleone's swollen face. The studio didn't want him. They didn't want Al Pacino either. Thought he was too soft, too unknown, too short. Coppola fought for both. Half the cast was hired reluctantly. Scenes were rewritten to work around budget, lighting, or Brando's whims, and yet some of the most unforgettable moments were pure accident.
You never wanted my friendship. And, you were afraid to be in my debt.
The cat in Brando's lap in the opening scene wasn't written in, it wandered onto set and curled up on him minutes before they started rolling. Brando stroked it while delivering lines so quietly the sound team nearly scrapped the audio. During the restaurant shooting scene, Pacino wasn't told exactly when the gun would be available in the bathroom, and his fumbling was real. His hands shook, the silence dragged, and it gave the moment a kind of dread no amount of blocking could fake. The movie's precision came from its chaos, from people improvising within a structure that could barely hold them. Blade Runner begins with a single question: have you ever retired a human by mistake? And ends with a man realizing that the thing he's hunting might be more alive than he is. Deckard is a Blade Runner hired to kill rogue replicants, and the city around him never stops raining, never stops flickering, never once feels like it exists in daylight. But the soul of the movie lives in its quiet breakdown. Rutger Hauer, who played the replicant Roy Batty, rewrote his own death scene the night before filming.
All those moments will be lost in time.
The original speech was longer, colder, and felt like it belonged to someone less self-aware. Hauer trimmed the lines, added the tears and rain phrase, and delivered it while soaked, freezing, and shivering under failing lighting rigs. The crew didn't know what he was going to say. Even Ridley Scott was surprised. The silence that followed wasn't staged. Harrison Ford didn't say anything because he didn't know what to follow it with. Off camera, the production was falling apart. The budget kept stretching, the studio hated the dailies, and Ford and Scott stopped speaking for days at a time. Test screenings bombed so badly they added a voiceover and changed the ending against Scott's wishes. Decades later, Scott released a cut without it. But the thing that never changed, the part nobody ever tried to polish, was that rooftop scene, an improvised speech, a dove that wouldn't fly, and a villain who was never really a villain in the first place. Raiders of the Lost Ark begins with a professor climbing through a booby-trapped jungle temple before heading back to class like nothing happened, and somehow only gets weirder from there. Indiana Jones is supposed to be looking for the Ark of the Covenant, but what he's really doing is outrunning every curse, soldier, and snake thrown in his direction. Spielberg shot the film like a sprint, tight budget, short schedule, no second takes unless absolutely necessary. The famous sword versus gun scene wasn't in the script. It was supposed to be a long choreographed whip and blade fight, but Harrison Ford had food poisoning that day, barely able to stand, let alone duel in the sun, so he pulled his revolver and shot the swordsman instead. Everyone laughed. Spielberg kept it. The crew moved on. Another iconic moment, Indy facing a pit of snakes, almost didn't happen because the snakes they brought weren't enough. They had to scramble, adding hundreds of hose segments and shadows to fill the frame. Ford's visible discomfort wasn't performance. He hated snakes. The truck chase, considered one of the best action sequences ever shot, was rehearsed once, then filmed live with real stunts, real sweat, and only one backup truck. Ford did much of it himself, bruised ribs and all. Raiders worked because it was constantly on the edge of falling apart. The set was too hot, the shoot too fast, the star too sick, but the energy stayed. The mess made it exciting, and some of its best scenes happened only because nothing else would. Good Will Hunting opens with a janitor solving an equation that's supposed to take weeks and pretending he didn't do anything special. Will isn't just a genius, he's someone who hides brilliance behind fights, jokes, and a fear of getting close to anyone. The core of the film isn't math or therapy, it's that someone like him would rather sabotage his own future than risk being seen.
It's not your fault.
Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean, not you.
It's not your fault.
The moment the film truly finds itself happens in a therapy room, with Robin Williams repeating the words "it's not your fault" until Will stops deflecting and finally breaks down. That scene wasn't scripted like that. The line was in the script once, but Williams decided to repeat it again and again, changing the tempo, leaning in closer, until Matt Damon, who didn't know how far Williams would go, started crying for real. The laughter in the park bench scene was real too. When Sean talks about his wife farting in her sleep, Damon didn't expect it. That was Williams ad-libbing again just to see what would happen. The camera shakes slightly, crew members couldn't stop laughing. Williams improvised so much that most takes had alternate versions, different lines, different tones. The warmth between Sean and Will wasn't written. It came from two actors surprising each other in every take. What was supposed to be a heavy drama about trauma and redemption turned into something gentler, funnier, and more human, because Robin Williams kept making it up as he went. Dirty Dancing opens at a summer resort where the food is bland, the guests are rich, and the entertainment staff throw secret parties in the woods after hours. Baby comes from a good family and wants to save the world. Johnny teaches dance classes and doesn't care what people like or think. Their relationship isn't supposed to happen, but then neither is anything else in this movie. Jennifer Grey was nervous throughout filming, especially during intimate scenes, and the crew kept rolling when things got awkward or went off script. When she walks into the staff party carrying a watermelon and blurts it out like she's just realized she's out of place, that line wasn't in the script. Grey just said it out loud, embarrassed, and the director loved the honesty. During the scene where Johnny slides her arm around his shoulder, her laughing fit wasn't acting. She kept breaking during takes, and Patrick Swayze was getting frustrated, which added tension that actually helped the moment land. The lift in the final scene, the one everyone remembers, wasn't rehearsed. They only tried it once before filming, and what you see is the first take. It worked, barely, and that rawness made it unforgettable. Even the training montage carried traces of real tension. Gray and Swayze didn't get along, and some of that friction leaked into the choreography. Dirty Dancing didn't succeed because it was perfect, it became iconic because so much of it wasn't. The best parts were accidents that felt more honest than the script ever planned.